had some really great questions up here, by the way, during the program. Thank you for that. Some of us, hopefully more of you enjoy your break. I kind of hope we're igniting our thinking around the principles of learning. So I really think those are the keys to this idea. That first big idea of the professional learning community at work is to have a focus on learning rather than teaching. And what that really requires is we look at everything we do under the lens of learning and ask ourselves if that's the best practice. I'm only bringing this earlier. You have this in your handout. It's on page 10, so I know I'm skipping over some pages. But just because it's pertinent to some of the previous discussion, this is how a team operated when they were answering question number 1 of the collaborative teams. What do we want students to learn? So their product is not just I can statements for the adults to share with kids. Their product is this sheet to give to students. And as they do assignments and quizzes and assessments and dress rehearsals, the experience of actually finding out where are you in your learning, they have kids process that sheet. So that was what their team did when answering question number 1. Now, I like it, and there's one thing I would change about it. I would change the last column. I would not like that heading on your sheets. I hope you would. I don't change people's work, but I would change the last column to read something else like, not yet. Yeah, something like that. But I do like the words, strong mathematicians. I like that one, right? Strong mathematicians can do these things. And students self-reflect. They do that self-reporting. Now, self-reporting, by Hattie's standards, John Hattie, Dr. John Hattie, okay, I'll see somebody if you ready to shake your head, you know Hattie's work. So the best we can do in education on finding best practices is a thing called a meta-analysis of research. In other words, we take a look at all the research that's been done on a topic or in education, and we have to decide, is that a good standard of research? Was it well constructed or not? Because some research is just badly constructed. So Hattie looks at all these studies that are done, understanding full well that we cannot do harm to kids in any of our research projects that we put together inside the classroom, right? Or inside of the school. I've only seen one time where they did this research. They were trying to research, can students learn to read on their own? And so they ran this experiment where they put a group of, I think, 5 students in a room with a table filled with books. These are 5 kindergarten students in a room with tables filled with books. And they observed them for 1 week to see if they would teach themselves how to read. And none of them did. So they stopped the project and started doing what we know we have to do, which is teach kids how to read. So we can always think, well, every research does not have that group that you would do harm to, right? So when Hattie does his study on what are the most effective strategies we should be using inside a school, self-reporting was the highest one that we should be doing. It has a 1.44 standard deviation gain. So in our model of a professional learning community, when we see numbers like that, a 1.44 standard deviation gain, that was the top on his list. We would invest some of our work around having students self-report. It also, in Marzano's study on highly engaged, motivated classrooms, he says there are 4 categories: emotion, interest, importance, self-efficacy. Self-efficacy has the greatest effect size of any of those engagement and motivation strategies. It's the student's belief that I can actually do these things. The 3 things we're supposed to do as educators for self-efficacy, the top 3, there are others, but the top 3 are have students track and study their progress, use effective verbal feedback, and tell your stories. Tell your great stories that solidify for students that people can overcome difficult situations. So those are the 3 things you do. Have kids track and study. I saw a second grade teacher, you know what she does? Yeah. So when reporting time comes, it has kids process their goals for the grading period and the areas they want to grow in their grading period. Pretty cool stuff. So I share page 10, page 11. That's just that checklist idea. It's actually page 11 and 12, where they did a science project and then they have to write a letter to the editor. I just want to share some examples of teamwork that I think is pretty cool stuff, because I'm pretty sure you've already identified your essential learning outcomes. It's just where could you take that and leverage that even more as you think about teamwork here. By the way, kindergarten teachers, I don't put a lot of stuff in my handouts for the kindergarten folks because they're all over the internet. Seriously, if you do a Google search right now, because of the effect size and the standard deviation gain, if you were to do a Google search of student data notebooks and look for images, you'd be blown away at how this is taking over, right? Because teachers are seeing the power of having kids, even kindergarten kids, self-report and reflect on their learning. And there are a lot of kindergarten sheets out there that you can modify. If you email me, I will send you a whole packet of this stuff, including a whole section on student-led conferences, which gives the students even greater ownership of their learning. So my email address is on that first page, right? It's Brown Charles. It's not a 1. Out of respect to my parents. It's browncharles2@gmail.com. And I'll send you everything I have. Most of it as a Word document, so you can actually modify it on your own to make it your own. All right? And it includes sheets in there about your class mission, about your values and vision and how you get kids to do the same thing. To create a mission in the classroom, a vision of the classroom, a set of collective commitments to the kind of classroom we're creating together, right? I've got a lot of pictures that people send me of what they're doing with their kids in relationship to that. I'll show you one in just a second. Just to kind of, here's one of a rubric. You have that in your handouts on page 13. We're actually having kids self-reflect on the rubric of graphing their data so that they can think about what they needed to improve in and then set goals for that improvement area. So those are just a few that I brought, but I've got like a whole bunch more, but the packet would be gigantic if I gave them all to you. The other thing I was mentioning, I shared this with one other person. Take a look at how this teacher actually creates the effort in her classroom to have them think about the kind of classroom they're wanting to have if we're going to have high levels of learning. So this teacher, what he does is, because you can't read, here's what it looks like. That's the picture. So he sits with his class and they come together to envision what our classroom would look like if all of us were going to learn at high levels. And so using post-it notes and these questions, that's how he's kind of organized for that. See how he's leveraging, because I think a team ought to go through a process, and you have this in our handouts for today, of what do we want our classrooms to look like for students and for ourselves? How do we want our students to interact with learning, right? What will we do when students struggle? And to achieve that, here's what each of us are committing to do. I think a team has to create a set of commitments, in other words, to lessen the ambiguity and raise the standard. Because commitments cause us to have no ambiguity. This is how we're going to behave and act and perform to create this school, these classrooms where all of our students will achieve at high levels. And that commitment drives us into this work all the time. So just to share a couple of examples, because when we think about this idea of the professional learning community, to me, when we really broaden our perspective, it's not so kooky that we would collaborate with each other, is it? I mean, who knows some of this stuff? Some people are trying some of these things in their classroom. How many of you are having kids? One teacher came up and said, we're having kids track their fluency rates. Their oral reading fluency, yeah? So we have some people, look, if one of us is doing it, that's a start. Now we need to ignite that by having others do that. And that's how it grows. We call it the first follower. We have one person who starts, and then all we need is one follower to ignite the process. Pretty soon we're at the highest level. The highest level is not one person and not one team. The highest level is everybody. The The highest level of the school is when we latch onto these ideas, right, and decide to be the world's best at all of this really great stuff we can be doing. So I don't think that's a kooky idea that we would actually collaborate. I think it makes common sense. Common sense from Thomas Paine. Anybody? Okay, history guy. Yeah, American Revolution. Yeah. See, Bob Acre, when they wrote their first book on professional learning communities back in 1998, this is what he wanted to call their book, Common Sense. They did not want to call it anything because they knew what was going to happen. As soon as you name something in education, it turns into an acronym. And then before long, it makes the list of all the other acronyms that we play around with in education and teachers' worlds. He said, our last thing we wanted was for PLC to be on a list with all the other things that would happen to teachers. We wanted it to be a process where we engage in this continuous effort of collaborative, collective inquiry, searching for answers. Especially, we wanted to be a process where we think about this thing, not as a program, right, but a process of coming together, working collaboratively in continuous collective inquiry and action research. Action reading, it's happening in the building. What are the results, right? To better meet the needs of our kids. So to me, common sense makes perfectly good sense when you look at that quote from Thomas Paine. Because we're all doing what we know how to do. What if we brought our thoughts together to think about how best to act on behalf of our students to ensure that all of them learn at high levels? Then it'll be amazing what happens inside of our classroom. See, it is so common sense to me that I think we need to explore it in this way. All right, I'm going to ask you to stand real quickly and look around you, front or back, okay? And I want you to partner up with somebody. Would you do that? Put two-person team. Partner up with two-person team. All right, ready? Okay, so next thing I want you to do is I want you to label off. One of you letter A, the other person letter B. Would you do that very quickly? Okay. Let me check you out. Raise your hand if you're letter A. So, side note here. If you're letter A, it usually means one of two things. Either means that you're the risk taker because you know you're going to go first, or you're too slow in the morning and you let your partner say you need letter A. Now, are you ready? I want you to get arranged in a certain way. If you're letter A, I want you to stand to where your back is facing the screen. If you're letter B, I want you to stand to where you are facing the screen. All right, let's have a little fun. Ready? There are common terminology that you as members of the professional learning community would know and promote. These are so common sense that I think you'll be able to describe them to your partner. So we're playing the $25,000 pyramid without $25,000 to give away. Right? Darn it. Yeah, your bonus check today is just knowing that you're going to make a difference in the world. Okay? Here's what I want us to do. The category is not things a dictator would say. We're doing the category that says things you would know about and promote as leaders, we're all leaders, in a professional learning community. So you'll see a phrase up on the screen, letter B, you'll see the phrase. Your job is to describe it to letter A without using the words. Now, I even allow you to use hand motions. So you can use hand motions, all right? And it doesn't have to be one word, right? Hey, yeah, really clear, it's not charades. You can use your voice, okay? So, you ready? Now, when you get it, I need to know, because we're not going to wait for everybody to get it. So I need to know when you get it by raising your hand or shouting out, just celebrate. And when I see that we got about 6 groups that got it, we're moving to the next word, all right? Or word, set of words. Here we go. You understand? Do this for me real quick. Before we start the list, talk to your neighbors, see if they understand the same thing you understand we're about to do. Ready? Here we go. All right, I'll move out of the way. First set of words. You definitely know this stuff. Ready? First set of words. Go. Okay, go. Go out. started to give clues to the word switch. Like, I think that's when we move kids around. If we switch kids, here we go. Ready? New set of words. Good luck. Ready? Go. What do we know, right? And how do we promote those things is the next question. See, to me, all of those are kind of what this is built around. A high expectation. Well, how do I know that exists? If I was, trying to come into a building and say, how do you know these exist? What is your understanding of it? How do you know those exist? What would that look like? We'd all be able to say, well, here's how we promote that, right? So you think about high expectations. How do you promote high expectations? Well, you assist kids master the concepts. High expectations, we assist them to work collaboratively in order to understand how to manage that system when we got kids with all kinds of gaps. And you can't do it all in your classroom. High expectations, you'd have goals. And you would drive yourself to these goals. You'd create action steps. You have goals because you care about this. That's a high expectation class or a high expectation team or a high expectation school. We never write goals because we're mandated to write goals. We write goals because there's something we care about. And we're caring deeply enough that we would create action steps to cause change. How would we do? What would we need to do differently in order to get these things? So high expectation school, they have mission, vision, values, and goals that they drive themselves to accomplish. They have a BHAG. They have that, we call it your mission, your big, hairy, audacious goal. Jim Collins' work. Jim Collins in his book, Good to Great. Oh, and some people smile. BHAG, have you heard that term before? BHAG? Yeah. I have an elementary school out in Wyoming that I had a chance to work with. You know what they do? And maybe you do this, I don't know. Out beside every classroom teacher's door is a BHAG monster. It's just this crazy, big, hairy, audacious monster. And each classroom sets goals as a classroom that they want their students to achieve, and the students are trying to achieve. And as they achieve the goal, it's on a 3x5 note card, they write done, and they start dressing up the monster. So the monster will all of a sudden, you walk down, they've got a top hat on, they've got a bow tie on, they've got a cane, they've got dress shoes. So they actually take that whole concept and think about our BHAGs in our classroom, our being very audacious goal for the classroom. I've got a couple of pictures of it. It's just darling. The art teacher created it for everybody, and then the class colors it up, and they put it on their doors. It's a consistent process for them in their school, so every doorway. If the library has one, right? The increased circulation by 16,000 books. That would be a BHAG, wouldn't it? To increase circulation by 16,000 books. Wow. as a big, hairy, audacious goal. That seems almost impossible. That's why they call it the big, hairy, audacious goal. Collins said it's like the NASA moon mission. Why go to the moon? Not because it's easy, but because it's hard, is what Kennedy said. Not because it's easy, but because it's hard. That'll be the best measure of us as a country is one we're willing to win. That's why you do goals. So school, classroom, team with high expectations meets regularly, stays focused, and ensures that the work gets done at a high level because everybody's committed to that. So this is kind of my idea about what I would see if I walked into a building. I would look for those things. I would see how you operate. I would see how you go into team meetings. I would see how you conclude a team meeting, right? I would see if you drew yourselves back to the goal that why we met in the first place. To see if you really have those high expectations. I don't always see team meetings end like that. I see a lot of team meetings end like this. Whoa, we got to go. Closure. We need closure at every team meeting. It's just like we need closure to a lesson. Closure is important, right? So what would be your things that you'd look for? Well, this is what I want you to process. Let's give you about 10 minutes, right? Because on page 3 and 4 of your handouts, you have all those things that you should be able to say, as a member of this professional learning community in my school, we'd be able to see these things happen. This is what it would look like. And so you only got 10 minutes, though. But it's team time. Come together. You're welcome to stand, huddle up, move out of these chairs if you want to. But let's take 10 minutes and just see what your thoughts are in terms of all those things you see on that page. What would be the evidence? What would you look for? How do you promote those things? Okay? Questions? I'll just wander around. If you need help, raise your hand. I'll do it. Okay? Go. 10 minutes. Okay, so I bet you, let's go a little bit longer than 10. Some of you have completed it, others you're still on high expectations. I don't know. That's okay. You come on back. We have to keep moving forward. I sometimes do encourage people to stop and think. So of those things on that list, now that we've identified what it would look like or what we believe needs to be promoted, your next question is, so what things are you great at? What things do you want to get better at? To me, it's always a journey in that way. That at any point in time, we'll find some teams that just knock it out of the park consistently. Meeting after meeting, year after year after year, they're like, whoa. They are a team that works like their hair is on fire, you know what I mean? And then sometimes they have a team that gets off track. Or they started strong, and then they're kind of get, I don't know, something's not working quite right, there's some dynamic going on there. And we just ask, because we say it this way, any team, any one of us, but any team that's too busy to stop and reflect is probably too busy to continuously learn. So every now and then you think, well, what are we great at? What do we need to get better at? What's one thing? Just one. To be a 10 team, right? Because our kids deserve us to be a 10 performing team. So with that protocol, we ask, are there some things we need to start doing then? And sometimes we have to ask some teams, are there some things we need to stop doing as teams, or as a member of a team? So if I'm thinking about those three big ideas, and those were in there, those were in the list, the three big ideas, a focus on learning, which is that fundamental shift, right, from a focus on teaching to that focus on learning. And we work collaboratively on matters related to learning, which in the classroom, the things that matter are your curriculum at the right level and clearly stated with attention to students, to where we're really clear about the learning targets for kids. That's what really matters, the right level of rigor and understanding what is most essential, not what's in the textbook, but what is most essential, so that we'll keep some things, drop some things, create some things, because it's not in the textbook. So that's what we mean by work collaboratively on the matters, curriculum. Assessment really matters. We already discussed that. But instruction obviously matters. But there's an art and a science to teaching. I totally agree with Marzano on that. There are some teachers that he's been able to demonstrate that there's this science of teaching and the value of working with kids in select kind of classroom, the way to develop lesson plans, the things to consider for lesson design. He says there's a science to that. But clearly there's this little art piece, because he says, I can always find an anomaly to the science of teaching. I can find a teacher who breaks all the rules about effective instructional practices but gets great results, right? The answer to that is gets great results. It's not break the rules about the science of teaching and get bad results. It's you get great results. So that's why I'm with him. There are some times I've seen teachers just like, wow, I would never create that classroom like that, you know? But it works. That's why it says the art and science of teaching. But if we're not getting great results, if our students are not achieving high levels, it's time to look at somebody else's art and science of teaching who is getting great results. And then we match that. But I want to base that off of evidence. And the evidence is found in our common formative assessments. So that's how we determine the best instructional practices with each other. So curriculum matters, assessment matters, instruction matters. Intervention obviously matters. It's got to be quick. Got to be a sense of urgency to that. I mean, we have teams that create their intervention. You probably do the same thing. They create their intervention based off of a weekly assessment. And they give that in language arts, or they give that in mathematics. And from that, they know next week which kid needs intervening on specific skills. That's how fast they are and how good they are at looking at data together to plan the intervention to tier 2 intervention for their kids, because the team is responsible for that tier 2 intervention model. And then the other thing that matters is this growth mindset. That's just, do we have a classroom that promotes self-efficacy, the belief in themselves, the growth mindset, I can do this, that kind of idea. And what does that culture of a classroom have to have in place for that to really be the case? So if you take all that work collaboratively on matters related to learning, understand that, and hold each other accountable, be results-oriented, means we're not just going to talk about this stuff, we're going to do this stuff. Okay? Because it's what gets the best results. So focus on learning. Let's just take, I love this. I mean, when I first heard this, it totally changed my mind about what I've been doing for years. I've been focusing on teaching, you know, and not focusing on did all the kids get it, and if they didn't, what do I need to do differently? So we were just teaching it the same way and just going on and thinking, well, kids didn't get it, they just didn't study hard enough. That was kind of our rule of thumb in my middle school. And as a high school principal, that was definitely the rule of thumb. Is if kids weren't learning it, it's because they didn't study hard enough. Then they have to have this awakening that goes, oh my gosh, it might not be that they didn't study hard enough. It might be that I presented it in a way that was confusing to them. It might be that I didn't connect the dots or take the time to help them connect. It might be that I don't understand how the brain works. And if you understand, so we say focus on learning, you kind of got to go with this whole idea that everything we do has to be centered on learning and understand these principles of learning and how they would affect our practices inside the classroom, right? So let's just go to the principles of learning, right? And let's do it in this way. Do you know that we're all wired differently, right? Everybody knows that? I mean, the challenge for adults in a collaborative culture is this realization that we are wired differently. Well, so are kids. We process things differently, and so are students. And psychologists will tell you that we all have different personalities that we're hardwired with. You have a personality type that you are hardwired to. Psychologists will tell you there are nine different personality types, right? Then you can go online and take the personality tests. It's called the Enneagram, and they'll tell you what your strengths are, but also being aware that if this is your personality type, there may be some things you have to be aware of and consider when working with others and in different situations. So the challenge of a community that's creating this culture is understanding all the dynamics of these people who sit around the table with you, right? Here, write down these 4 words, ready? Just watch it. Write down these 4 words. Write down the word horse. Write down the word horse. Horse. Second word, write down the word nose. Oh yeah, like the nose on a face. And the first one is a horse like the one that gallops, not the other kind of horse. Okay? See, some people didn't think of that one, didn't think of those different. Somebody just wrote down horse like the one that gallops and nose on the face of it. The other people, there are 2 spellings of that. Maybe more. Next word is not. Next word, just write down the word anvil. Is that my Missouri accent happening to you guys? How do you say it? Anvil? Did I say how I said it? Yeah. Anvil. You know what I'm talking about, right? Anvil? Okay. A-N-V-I-L. Okay, all right. Then the last word, let's write down the word clock. Clock. Tick-tock, clock. All right? Now, without talking to anyone, circle the word on the list that you don't think belongs on the list, and write a reason why. Make a commitment. Circle the word on the list that you don't think belongs on the list, and write a reason why. Huddle up with their teammates and share your answer and the reason why. Do it very quickly. our various personalities together, even the way we think about things or the way we process, some of you answered as a process of elimination. Others of you saw patterns that no one else saw. Others see part whole. Some of you see the obvious. Some of you see relationships as a storytelling process. I mean, it's fascinating to me how we think through these. Some of you are very clever in how you think of things. I mean, like, stand up if you chose horse. Stand up if you chose horse. These typically are not our clever people. They are our concrete, obvious people. Right? Why did you choose that? It's an animal. It's the only animal. And we're going, how'd the rest of you miss that? Right? I mean, it's the most obvious. See, what I love about us coming together as a collaborative team is that sometimes the obvious answer is right in front of us, right? I mean, it should be certainly just obvious to others, but they're not obvious. John Medina, in his book, Brain Rules, 12 Rules for Thriving and Surviving at Home and Work and at School. Read the book. It'll totally change how you think about your lesson design, okay? Brain Rules. But one of the things he states in his book, he's a neuromolecular biologist, but he writes to where I can understand it, okay? He makes this statement. The reason we should study this stuff is this. What's obvious to you is obvious to you. And it may not be as obvious to everybody else that horse is the right answer, because it's the only animal. I see sometimes, like, how many of you have stopped averaging grades? Yeah, it's obvious we shouldn't average grades to determine a student's scores or determine how they did in the class, not when learning is continuous. You quit that business, right? Most elementary people have kind of stopped the practice of doing homework because it's shown to be very little benefit at the elementary level. So that's obvious to some, but not everybody's on board with that. If you are, most elementary people have definitely stopped grading it. Because you have no evidence of who did it or how much is the students' work, right? And so definitely that's obvious, but for years it has not been obvious, right? That we would stop that practice. It's a formative event. That's obvious too. So we see some stuff happening now because we raise awareness. We make that which is unconscious conscious as members of a collaborative team, professional learning community, bringing our various understandings together. Stand up if you chose the word, what was the second word? No, stand up if you chose the word nose. I love it, nose. Some of you are standing because you're concrete. How many of you chose it because it has 4 letters? I totally never would have seen that, by the way. I'm not a pattern person. Yeah. How many of you chose it because it's part of something else? Part of something else? One more reason. Tell me why. Another reason. Somebody had a good one over here. Who had that? Yes, what was yours? It won't hurt if it falls on you. Now, where does she get the idea that apples fall on you? Roadrunner cartoon. Do you have another reason? Oh, I forgot. Yeah, the other one. So relationship to work, which is really kind of fascinating. You know, horse works. An amble is for working. A clock tells us the time for our work. But a nose? It breathes, but no one's calling that work. All right. All right. Stand up if you chose anvil. Anvil. Now look, in building consensus, we would say the will of the group is that it's anvil. But this is not a good consensus model because it's just you making your own opinion known, right? And that's the problem with building consensus is that we just pool opinions rather than study things better, right? And look and bring voices to the table. So look at all the, because really anvil has like the most craziest reasons that I just can't get, like, how many of you chose it because it's the only one that starts with a vowel? All right. How many of you chose it because it doesn't have an O? There we go, okay. How many of you, every now and then, because I work with elementary people, they'll go, somebody has, well, I chose it because it's the only one with 2 syllables. Anybody have that one? A lot of elementary people go, very anvil, right? Any others? It's, what else? Doesn't have a face. The other ones all have a face. Yay, oh. The visual, I'm curious about those people who see that, all right? They don't see, like, I'm wondering, let's go ahead, yeah. We'll get some more. We'll get another one here. Face people, I mean, when you say it's the only one without a face, that means you can visualize these things. In your brain, you visualize these things. Sometimes you're very good at creating the document to help kids trying to study the progress because you see a picture. You kind of work with pictures in your mind. Things go. What was your reason? It's the only one that doesn't run. It's the only, yeah, I love that one, right? Yeah. Yeah, there you go. Oh, nose runs, the clock runs, and the horse runs. But the animal doesn't run at all. Right. I love it. And so some people are like, oh, that's the cool part about this. Don't you think that's the cool part? It's like somebody comes up with something, we all go, oh. Oh, when my kindergarten teachers would sit together and look at the data from kids, there were so many of those, oh, moments about how they're going to intervene for kids. I mean, they look at the data, they would be so creative. There's not a program for this, right? You don't just put kids in a program if they're struggling on something. You come together and you figure out what we need to do differently, right? Next week. And so they would come up with crazy stuff that I go, ooh, you just took your blinders off and had these, these kind of aha moments, right? Fifth grade, everybody was like that. I mean, fifth grade would do stuff like, look at this data. A lot of our kids didn't get it. There's no point in putting kids into groups. Let's just reteach it, but let's use some of the strategies. So let's have 2 hours of math tomorrow. Then we have 2 hours of math tomorrow using some of these strategies that we haven't been able to develop. I bet we can close the gap. And that's what happened. Kindergarten teachers did this one. About half the kids got this target, half the kids didn't get the target. So what we're going to do for this next week is we're going to send half the kids out for recess while we keep this half in. And then we're going to send the other half out for recess and keep the others in for enrichment. And this flexible grouping, you can't do that all the time. But it's like, what? We don't have to send all the kindergartners out at the same time for recess? Who would have thought they would think of that stuff? That's the cool part about what these aha moments would be. If you're not having those like in a team meeting, where you're not influenced, or you're not walking away sometimes going, that's brilliant. What she's doing is brilliant. I'm going to go watch her do that. Then I don't think your team meetings are as dynamic as they should be, right? You ought to be able. Can you think of the last time, something this year, where you walked away from a team meeting going, I just got something I'm going to try? Yeah. The best interview question I think I've ever heard for a teacher for a new position in a school was this. Tell me about a time when your practices changed as a result of collaborating with another teacher. And don't listen to their answer as much as watch their eyes. If their eyes have fire behind them, light behind them, and they're not just telling you an answer because they know you're a PLC school. They're telling you an answer because they really have influence. And the second question is, talk about a time when a colleague shared with you that you helped them because of the way you shared an idea. Or they came into your classroom to watch you teach. Isn't that cool stuff? Yeah, we're not having those moments. Clock. I've got clock. Clock people, stand up. Where are the clock people? No clock people? Oh yeah, come on, be brave, be bold. It's like, no. And all those ample people stood up. Right? Be bold, right? Be bold. Why did you choose clock?
Because the handle, they use that to beat the metal on, which they put on the horse's nose and back in the lesson.
Oh, okay. A history lesson, all in 4 words. I love it, right? And still today, they do that stuff. Why did you choose it?
Because the others were horse related. I think of animal as like the horseshoe.
Okay, so we see relationship with the horse all the time. Yeah, anybody else?
I had those, yeah, as one vowel.
As one vowel. Oh. Wow. So you had multiple things?
Yeah, I had the shoe, building with the anvil, and then the nose on the horse.
Wow. Oh, and then this. Wow, how about that? Only one vowel. All these have 2. Anything else?
Like, the other people were obvious, so
Yeah.
it's this very small group of people.
Yeah, this is a small group of people, right? It is. Because so many people have so many different answers for animal. Okay, that's why. But yeah, any other reason for clock? Yeah. It's mechanical, another obvious one, right? It's mechanical, then it's not really mechanical, great. Okay, clock people have, I was in the middle school, and this math teacher starts going in on the clock, he chose clock. He says, so I chose clock, because in my view, it's man's futile attempt to capture something that cannot truly be captured. In the whole sense of the universe, it goes on, time is infinite. It has been for eons. And yet, mankind always tries to capture it, always tries to isolate it, even down to milliseconds. He says, and it's an impossibility. We rule our lives. He's just going on and on and on. And it's just over my head about halfway through his whole statement, right? And I go, wow, you are a deep thinker. I mean, that was my first thought. My second thought was, what does team meeting sound like, right? So this is the challenge, and we have all these different personalities coming together to get them to focus on what are we going to meet today about. And if we commit to meeting about either curriculum, assessment, instruction, intervention, or our responses of growth mindsets, we'll matter. We'll do some worthy work then. But if we're meeting about other stuff, if that other stuff getting inside that team meeting, and it's not about curriculum, assessment, instruction, intervention, or the growth mindset, then we're probably not operating where we should be operating in a collaborative team. By the way, these different personalities, I thought I'd bring that picture to you. Those are the 9 different personality types in a cartoon format. All right. I have a friend that's a psychologist. He's done a lot of work in this area. His whole dissertation and doctoral program is built around the 9 different personality types. Here's how they're often defined, or in some cases they're defined in that way. And you can match up the caption in the cartoon to the type, right? And if you're not sure which one you are, if you've never taken the assessment, I encourage you to go online and take a look at it, because it's interesting. Like, my wife is a 1. Right? She's a 1, I'm a 9. Right? And we figured this out. I mean, I'm the peacemaker, she's the perfectionist, right? We have strengths, we have limitations, we have weaknesses, we have things that we have to be aware of in order to reach our goals, right? So I think about that from a group. I think sometimes you have to suppress certain parts of you in order to work collaboratively with others. I think you have to be aware of your personality type and how it influences others and how it affects those other personality types. If you're unaware of the people part of teams, that's when I sometimes see teams really struggle. And they just fall apart. I mean, there's 3 parts of a team in a collaborative culture. It's people. So you have to understand the dynamic of people coming together with these different ways they think and these different personality types. And then it's processes because of that, having processes that actually keep us moving in the right direction in curriculum, assessment, instruction, intervention, growth mindset. And then it's tasks. We complete tasks that will help kids achieve the goal of all of them reaching mastery on what we said was essential within the curriculum. Yeah, and I'm telling you something, folks. Those 9 personality types, kids own them too. They're hardwired. They're hardwired. Charlie's a perfectionist. She's hardwired for that. She's a dear, sweet soul, but she is a perfectionist, and that makes a difference in that teacher's classroom. Is she'll work hard, but she will be embarrassed. She's a pleaser. She wants it to look right and be right, and if it's not, it's an anxious moment for her. And her teachers view, because we all know this, right? You're the 2nd most influential people in kids' lives. That's what kids tell you. Kids tell you that the number 1 most influential people in their lives are their parents. Number 2 are teachers and coaches. That's universally agreed upon. But for the instructional process, it's us. For the instructional process, it's us. And if you don't understand that some kids come to you with different personalities, then you probably might not intervene at the right level or use the right strategy for some kids or approach it the right way. You're challenged. Honestly, you're challenged. I think this is the hardest thing we do, is to understand these personality types, the way kids are wired, to understand how the brain actually works in these kids, and to think about what we need to do to instruct and to help them and how to respond with those kids. I'll tell you, the other thing I think is really hard for us to do is know when to rescue a kid in a learning moment and when to let them struggle. Whew. Isn't that hard? Oh my gosh, that pulls on us all the time. Doesn't it pull on you all the time? From knowing when to let a student struggle to where the dendrites and neurons are actually staying active. Because if you rescue them too soon, you've interfered, you've cut the dendrite neuron talking to each other, and so synapses don't happen. This growth of the synapses don't actually happen. How many of you talk to your kids about those things? Dendrites, neurons, right? No? Well, you could. Actually, kindergarten people do that all day. They usually say the brain's chunky and swirling. You know, it's trying to make connections. Like my first grade teachers were always saying, all right, kids, now know your brains are chunky and swirling. Let's talk about our connections. How's it connecting in the brain? They'd have these little symbols and signs, you know, brain-based kind of ideas with kids. Yeah, focus on learning. Understanding all of this. See when they came up with this idea, they said, well, we've got to create a school where all kids learn, where we stop the old traditional practice of picking winners. Schools were built around that, by the way. You know that, right? Traditional schools were all about picking the winners. And every single one of us, most of us, grew up in that school. Most of you grew up in a pick the winner school. Which kids get it right the first time? Or which kids needed more time or never got more time? Right? And we run across folks sometimes that have a really hard time with this model of create winners. Right? We have people who have, we have adults out in our world who would prefer that you pick the winners. That they want a class system, a ranked system. They're not happy that sometimes if you're trying to get all students to learn at high levels and you're following some practices like reassessment and intervention. Right? They don't like that. I mean, my wife's doctor hates this idea. We socialize with him, and he goes, he says, so we're sitting together one time at dinner, and he goes, so what are you going around the country telling people now, Tim? You know, I'm saying, well, we're trying to create a different school than what we grew up in. We're trying to create a school where all students, and we're serious about it, all kids will have access to a better future because we're going to get them there. And our teachers are going to work like crazy, understanding that some kids need more time and support. And so they're going to give them more time and support to get them there. That we've made time and support variables instead of constants. So we vary the amount of time and we vary the levels of support, right? Because some kids need that varied level. That's how we'll get more kids to learn. He says, you allow kids to reassess now? They can retake a test? I go, oh, sure. After they relearn, we want them to demonstrate to themselves that they can do that. Because when they can do that, they become more confident and believe in themselves. And if they don't have that opportunity to correct, then learning will stop for those kids. That's what we really know. He says, you have got to stop telling people this. He says, you understand, Tim, that if you do this, if people actually start following these practices, there's that possibility that all the kids in your school will make A's and B's. Yes, we are. We're fully aware and we like it. We like it, right? He says, but you won't be able to tell the kids you get it right the first time over the kids who need additional time. Yeah, I'm okay with that. Right? We're all okay with that. And he kept bugging me. He just kept quizzing me about it. I just said, Rob, I'm shooting in the dark. Did you get into medical school on your first attempt? And he says, no. Why are you debating this with me, for Pete's sakes? I mean, does it make you less of a doctor because it took you 2 tries to get into medical school? I mean, please tell me no, you treat my wife, right? Then he's a great doctor. They just had figured out that some people will need a pathway that's a little different to success and stay internally motivated rather than have that internal motivation dampened down by failure. Instead, understand that sometimes they just needed more support, different way, more time. So we get this and make a commitment. I mean, right? Daniel Goleman, you guys are familiar with him in multiple intelligences? Yeah, he'll tell you that you've got to have this commitment going on all the time, right? All the time. And that he will argue that explicitly stated norms are the most powerful steps to getting people to work together effectively because of the different personalities and different ways they think. Yeah. I ran across this set of norms, page 6 of your handouts. I'm telling you, that's a beautiful set of norms or values, collective commitments. Take a look at that. I mean, some of that's incredibly normal. You know, those first 5 bullets, I think I'd see it anywhere in a school statement of their values and collective commitments. I would see that in almost read those first 5. Those are like totally normal. You're probably on your list too. In terms of collective commitments, What do you think? Yeah? Of course you're going to be optimistic and enthusiastic. We expect that of each other. Of course we're going to respect all staff, students, and their families. We would expect that. We'll include the parents and the community in the learning process. We'll have high expectations for all students and ourselves. And we will accept responsibility for student learning and develop each student's potential. That's normal stuff. Then they got serious. Even more serious, right? Look at the next ones. What are those all about? Talk to your neighbor. What are the last ones all about? Think about the things that teachers are supposed to collaborate about.
All right, so let me bring you back because we don't have much more time left. So I look at that and I go, well, their last ones are all about curriculum, assessment, instruction, intervention, growth mindset. They're all about the 4 questions of teams. You guys pick that up, right? See, this group, there's no ambiguity in that school. If you're hired, they read these students and they say, this is what we do here. You want to be a part of this staff, these are things we've agreed. And this is a collective commitment. So they all had their voice in on this. Every team was given time and coffee, a gift card to Starbucks down the street. And they went down that street and they ironed out their commitments. And they said, make sure you talk about curriculum assessment, instruction, and intervention. That's what they came up with. And what they did is they brought all their lists back. And the leadership team came together and synthesized the information from the list, and that's the final result. See, when I think about this from the concept of learn, right, and understanding how powerful this is, I mean, wow, we all have to be very, very effective. But we have some kids who are born on third base, is what they call it, right? But you have some kids who are not. You have some kids that just need enrichment, and you have some kids who don't need remediation and intervention, right? And here's what they have found repeatedly, that we are the key contributor to all kids learning, but especially for the kids who struggle. You are the difference. Talk about changing the world. Whew. All right. So when we think about the effect size of this work, John Hattie's work. So this is an earlier study by Hattie, 2013. He studied and answering the question, why are so many teachers in schools successful? And if you look at that, even though he's not a PLC guy, he's not writing about PLCs, do you see it? Which parts of those, and remember, you're looking for anything above a 0.4. 0.4 is normal growth. That's what's supposed to happen every year if a kid is staying on track and we're doing our work. But if you want to get to accelerate the learning of kids, to close the gaps, you got to do these things, anything above 0.4. You notice the things in Hattie's study about why so many teachers in schools are successful that connect to the 4 questions of teams and collaboration? So I'm thinking that the team is working together, they will evaluate their impact based off the evidence from a common formative assessment of their data. I'm thinking that if the team is unwrapping standards and describing
like those tools I shared with you earlier, but they are describing the explicit success criteria that a student must meet in order to demonstrate mastery. That's question number 1. Question number 3, 2, and 3 are creating a system where errors are okay. It's okay to have errors and not get it yet, because it's still new learning. And then to build a system of trust for the students to understand that you can get it. I'm going to get you. You can do this. We're not going to give up. It's important. Right? And then that whole idea of maximize feedback to teachers about their impact by having them look at those results as opposed to the old traditional practice of teacher supervision. Right? I do a minimum. You have to. As a principal, I had to do teacher supervision, but I've kept it to the minimum and thought we'd be better off if we collaborate, and let's make sure that that's at a high level in terms of our collaborative effort inside the school. So to me, that's what we would be about all the time. And then, of course, we work together to achieve this common goal of getting all of our kids to achieve at high levels. If I were to share one strategy for that, I would go with Bill Farragut. Bill Farragut is a 6th grade teacher. He's also an author. I always encourage you guys to be authors. You tell it from the teacher's perspective. So he submits manuscripts to Solution Tree, which is a publishing company for all this great work. And he's written 3 books, maybe 4, and he does consulting work when he can. He's my field test for everything, because he's writing about it from the teacher's perspective. So that's what he views his teamwork about. He says that all of us in my team, we understand when we stepped in the door for our collaboration time, that 1 hour a week that we have, we're stepping in to increase student achievement. So we all come in with one mindset. We're here to increase student achievement. We're not here because they make us be here. We're not here because they scheduled the time. We're here to increase student achievement. That's why we meet, and the way we're going to increase student achievement is by learning from each other and increasing our effectiveness. We have never found a school and student achievement increase without the teacher effectiveness also increasing by having and sharing those practices with one another. So here he says here's what it looks like. And all you have to do is compare your team meetings to what he has up there on the screen. Is that what it looks like when we meet together? And how high of a level is that? Does it sound like that? You have norms and values. Norms are how we're going to meet together. Values are we value formative assessment, we value lesson planning, not lesson planning, but lesson design. We value differentiated instruction, we value how we respond to kids when they get an assessment back, right? We value interventions. Those are things you value at the classroom level and as a team. Those are things you value. So we share dialogue about learning and teaching strategies and practices. Our focus is on student learning, and we take responsibility for student success. We do not start talking about their parents or society or the state government or those other things. We talk, what are we going to do? These kids don't have it. What are we going to do? He says, so everybody in my team has a growth mindset. That's what it takes. Everybody in my team has agreed to share knowledge and skills and not hold back. Be unafraid to share your knowledge and skills. Don't worry if you think somebody else thinks you're better than they are. That's not why you're here. You're here to share knowledge and skills, right? These are the evidence of my results. Here's why it worked. Build resilience and then determine priorities and create excellence. That's what it's saying. So let's kind of reach a part here where we think about the learning classrooms. I'm going to show you a picture in just a moment that I think captures the principles of learning that you see up on that page. I put them on the screen. You have it on page 9. Okay? These are truths, axioms, principles of learning. Don't you think? I mean, if they are, then all of us will have practices in our classroom that connect to them. Just really hard, fast practices. That's why we stop averaging scores, because learning is continuous. This is why we have kids read-learn, because without the opportunity to correct, learning is going to stop. This is why we share with students the targets that they're supposed to hit, and we have them hit those targets through quizzes and assignments that are in line to the assessment they're going to have to take. This is why we give them dress rehearsals in spelling and in math and in reading and in everything else you're doing, not just in spelling, right? Because they're going to see where they are in relationship to hitting the target. We improve with multiple attempts. True. Sure, that's why we give kids multiple attempts,
right? And it's why you've improved every time, every year, because multiple attempts at teaching something. Effort and proper preparation, the main determinants of success. Not you're only born to be doing this, but it's actually effort and preparation that leads to success. This is true. That's the brain is all. This is what I think is funny. Sometimes people don't understand why you use thinking maps or graphic organizers, and it's for that first brain rule on this slide. Help kids organize their thinking. It would be great at that kind of stuff for concrete learners, which most of you kids are, right? We're natural problem solvers and explorers. People are wired differently. We work harder and longer. When we're internally motivated, we learn best in a positive environment. Here's this picture. I want you to have a very, very quick conversation with your colleagues, all right, about those principles of learning that you see in this picture. Okay, now go back to the list. What do you guys see? Shout out, give some shout out to this kid and to the teachers who organized, orchestrated, directed, and choreographed these principles of learning. That's what we do. We come together and we orchestrate, we direct, choreograph this kind of thing to happen for a kid. That is a kid with a growth mindset, right? He believes in himself because of what the teachers organized for. What are the things you see there that are part of the principles of learning? He's improved in multiple attempts. Continuous learning. He knows the target. He knows the target. He knows where he is in relationship to hitting the target, which is really good because he'll take ownership of his learning this way. Oh, I love it. Go ahead. Positive environment. Talk about a positive environment. Oh my gosh. And errors and trust are welcomed as an opportunity to learn. What you can do with this moment with a kid, you can give him a cougar growl, right? You can celebrate him and send him back to his class. They send these kids down to my office with these data notebooks. And I'm like, look at this, you had cougar claws. You had the courage to learn, achieve, win, and succeed. That's the acronym for claws, right? Arrgh! After they get a cougar paw stand, right? What else? You see anything else up there? He is internally motivated. They activated they went with a visual. Vision is your most powerful sense. You got to activate all senses, but vision is the most powerful sense we have. And so they activated the visual. They went visual. How many of you go visual in your classroom, by the way? Oh yeah, you data wall people, I love you. Yeah, we got classroom data walls, and the kids are dying to know how we're doing as a class. We've got a class goal we're trying to reach. Anonymous stickers, not names. Anonymous stickers, right? To keep motivating the kids. Compare themselves to the goal, not to each other as a part of the class goal. That's cool stuff. Anything else you notice that's part of the principles of learning? Improve with multiple attempts. Anything else?
He didn't stop learning.
He did not stop learning. Yeah. That's the joy of this. I mean, that's how you keep kids motivated and engaged. And so when we say the last piece of this, because to me, that team is definitely, they have collaborated on the matters related to learning. The principles of learning, the learning outcomes, the way in which we get kids to respond and reflect on the learning. I mean, they are curriculum, assessment, instruction, intervention, growth mindset. It's there, right? And they're holding themselves accountable, which is honestly the last piece I only have, and I just have time to mention it, but to hold each other accountable, to come into a team meeting being results oriented, to come into a team meeting with your data on a short cycle common formative assessment, that's powerful. You know, when you write a common assessment, it should be short-sighted. My suggestion is when you write a common assessment, you divvy up the work. You take learning target number 1, learning target number 2, learning target number 3. You write the questions for those. We'll bring them together and we'll vet each other's questions. We'll have an open and honest discussion. We'll leave our egos at the door and we'll talk about this assessment that we've created together. And then we're going to talk about and write our scoring guide for some of the questions that are not right, wrong answers. Like, what if it's an extended response question? What kind of answer will we accept? And then, you know what's cool? Take the test. Even though it's a short test, take the test anyway. As a team. Then pass your papers to each other and score it using the scoring guide. You'll be amazed. Sometimes you'll come back and go, okay, we need to modify the scoring guide. Sherry, your answer was, I see it, but we didn't think about it when we wrote the scoring guide, but that could definitely work for answering this question. So if you're doing that, that's high-level teamwork. Making yourselves vulnerable, but also using the process of collaborating on a common formative assessment at a higher level. So then you'll either change a question or change the scoring guide, or it'll be just right where you want it to be. Then you'll agree on how you're going to administer the test. You come back with it administered the same way. Everybody administered it the same way. One person didn't review for 15 minutes while the rest of us just tested. We all agreed we're all going to review for 15 minutes or we're all just going to test. And we're going to put it into the kids' hands in a certain way so that we have validity to the assessment, right? When we come back, we've got our data posted like this, ready to go. And then we post it like this, on a screen, like this. And then we look at our scores together. And everybody just says, here's how, this is the percentage of my students that got that right. And then we have 1 minute of silence so we can think. So we can think about questions you want to ask a colleague, like Mr. Garcia. And then you're going to start asking them the questions. See, the protocol, I don't know how many of you have as a team, you have a protocol for looking at data? Like a set of questions? Yeah, okay. Mine were these. What's the data tell us? What are we going to do about it? That's it. 2 questions to guide our team discussion. And it'll tell you all those things. To be a high-performing team, you've got to make formative assessment the linchpin, but you've got to think beyond just creating common formative assessments. You've got to think about the principles of learning. You got to think about how intervention is critical at the team level, right? And then you become this amazing high-performing team. I know you're on that journey. I know a lot of you are already there. I want to thank you for giving me this part of your morning to at least stop and reflect. Share some amens, because I know you had amens in this room today, right? You had things that you're doing. I hope there were a couple of ahas as a result of us gathering together, and now the afternoon is, and the rest of the day is, so what? So what are we going to do? Become a number 10 team. Thanks so much for giving me your time. That packet that we were talking about earlier?
Yes, that is assessment notebook. I will have him email that to me, and I'll blast it out to all of you, because I have all your emails.
Yeah. And most of those sheets are self-explanatory, to be honest, but it's nice to have them at your disposal to kind of play around with.
Okay, so we're going to the high school comments for 1